So just, I guess, a couple of bits, just reflection, particularly around demand and COVID, of where we are. So again, I'm absolutely reiterate my thanks to you collectively. It doesn't matter what role you do in the organisation, paid or volunteered. The effort and the focus to look after our patients has been phenomenal. The progress against CQC is the area that we're focusing on in culture, and I guess my reflection over the last few weeks is something's not going to happen overnight to see suddenly a magical spark that all of a sudden it's different, because this is about the way that we feel, the way that we look, the way we have conversations, the way that it's a safe environment to be in, a safe environment to speak up, and how we work together to do that. So from that point of view, kind of again another element of reflection within there. Just for March, what we've seen as we've moved forward, almost a nearly a 10% increase. So as lockdown started to change in a different way, and I'm sure we will now see that throughout the rest of the year. It's really great that kind of we're seeing the easing of the COVID and additioning kind of plans from the government really following through. But obviously that translates undoubtedly to us for activity, and this will be the first weekend that pubs and establishments have been open as well. And so, when you bring that down into kind of reality, we are here and treating around 11% of patients a day, when we think it's about 260 patients a day, 270 patients a day, which are managed by a hear and treat. We're seeing around equates to about 100 patients an hour that we're dealing with in A&E. We're seeing PTS activity start to increase as well. We see some real positives in terms of how we measure, because I think sometimes we can have a look at that around the kind of the experience we have of feedback feeling really challenged. Actually, we're getting, when we looked kind of March, 1 complaint, we had 10 compliments to that, and that's really important, because sometimes the lens and the view is always, it's about kind of what doesn't go right, as opposed to actually, do you know what, we get stuff right, we look after patients and we do stuff right. It doesn't always go right in clinical terms. Clinical medicine is high risk, we know that, but actually it's about the approach that we have within there as well. The other bit is, I'm going to take my shameless plug, as I often do here, just to talk about COVID and COVID Secure. And I guess I still can't reiterate enough the fact that just because the vaccine program is rolling out and doing well, that actually we can't stop the other measures of COVID, about distancing, about hand washing, about face and space. It's so important, because actually the vaccination is likely to support a reduction in severity of symptoms. It won't necessarily eradicate all of it, and we will have to learn to adapt and live with COVID as we move forward in our life. For how long? Who actually knows? But actually in reality, where we are. Thank you to everyone who's gone and got their first vaccine. I know some colleagues have not been able to get their first vaccine yet. Some of the community hubs will be able to help, and also we are looking at opportunities for us to be able to run additional first vaccines internally as well. But I'd ask you to make use of those community clinics, and also thank you, and a reminder of, and have a chat with colleagues about whether they've picked up their second vaccine as well. It's a second vaccine that really does build and allow us to move forward on there as well. The other bit is just, it is really difficult, and I think, I've mentioned this before, I kind of do get the COVID fatigue on some of this. We've been going for many months on COVID, well, a year now on COVID, and also winter. But I just ask to think about the correct level PPE for the situations. Some of our AGP breaches have been very much about the deteriorating patient, and these things, they do happen, and it's difficult for everyone. And I say that there's no blame in that. It's just, we know it's difficult, but really asking you just to be able to see what we're able to do and what we're able to be within that. So i.e. trying to just remember that we need to maintain the PPE and all of the supportive measures that go through with that as well. The other bit is, we will obviously keep updating in terms of some of the COVID, I guess, feedback and the government guidance that comes out as we try to understand the impact and that real balance, I guess, between us as a healthcare provider, as an ambulance service, the impact to us as an ambulance service, and also, you know, we are all people. We are all people in society, and so actually the ability to go off and be with relatives, the ability to go out and enjoy a meal, the ability to go on some form of holiday for rest, relaxation. Actually, we are human. We are not human people. We need that and that social interaction. The other flip side to that is recognizing, do you know what, it's very different. It's very strange to see people. It's very strange to see people in person. And for some colleagues who we all work with, we may not have seen them in person, friends, family, we won't have seen them in person for a year. And that's a very, very big thing related in there as well. The other bit I just want to kind of touch on was around culture. So again, thank you all for those of you who've done the Pulse survey. We will be publishing the results next week from the January one. And I know, I guess we had a long discussion about this exactly this week about, I know people get a bit survey fatigued. It's a difficult one because it's the surveys that allow people to put measure. As with anything, whether it be a quality improvement, whether it be the service we deliver, whether it be what we think, we tend to rate or survey so many things nowadays. And I think trying to get, we are able to get away from and get a way to understand what does that mean in relation to, I guess, how we measure, you know, and there's a big bit that as we can start to ease some of the restrictions, and when I talk about restrictions, some of the restrictions were absolutely about supportive and protective, about not having or not having as many visitors coming to stations, people getting out and about, not because people don't want to, but actually about trying to support and that spread. The positivity is actually getting back out to have conversations, because, you know, the feedback I've had when speaking with colleagues is, what's the point of doing a survey? Will anyone listen? You know, and I think through our Q&As that we've had every week, I've seen some of that progression really of the ability to have conversations. It's not always about giving the answers to say I can solve every problem, but it is about the ability to have conversations and to be able to have almost a discussion and the ability to work through and deliver what we're able to do. The bit around that in feedback that will come out is really the areas of what does it tell us, what have you told us, what does it look like, and also about how do we solve some of that and making sure the solution. So very much the journey that we've been on is getting to some of the root causes, understanding, supporting the ability to speak up, feeling safe to speak out, dealing with some of our legacy casework and our legacy issues. Root cause is really important. I had a long conversation with Steve Mason as our culture director of at what point is intervention, when do we start to do what I guess in my own head I perhaps have thought of getting on with sorting some stuff out. And it's really interesting when I've gone through about kind of even, I guess, over time, my thoughts have changed of actually, if you don't get to the root cause and you don't really understand what you're trying to achieve or to change or to support with, then your intervention, i.e. the action you may take, may not address it. And therefore, you could put everyone on a course. There's nothing to say, actually, the course is the right course to address the right things, the right problems. The bit for me is the ability to have the conversation. That's one of the first bits, actually, to talk about it and actually to look about where and that sense of understanding within there as well. And so there's that strong link within it. I think now, as we tie those kind of two bits together, is we will always and absolutely carry on with regards to people who've turning over a stone and finding out. Actually, for me, it's about speaking up. I would expect as people start to feel comfortable, people word of mouth, they start to see something happen, they feel different, we may actually find more and more things come out. Now, actually, from that point of view, really encourage that, because the bravery to be able to speak up and actually, of course I can't talk about the details because they are absolutely confidential. Some of it even I don't know, because it's through the freedom to speak up route, and actually from that point of view absolutely confidential. Some of it we're asking teams and say the cultural team to support us with, and this is never about knowing individual and case, this is about making sure we manage situations. But actually when you start to build it further and forward is really getting to make sure we've got the basis right. effective and essential foundations is really going to be a focus for this year, because we can absolutely have all the highest falutin ideas in the world. We can have the biggest shiny strategy in the world. We can have flashing lights on billboards, but actually if we don't get the foundations right, you're never going to be able to build. You're never going to get it right, and you're never going to do the bit that, I guess, what the regulators externally and what people want to see is they absolutely want us to succeed as an organisation. We have shown in areas such as our response to COVID, the work that you've all done to support that, we can achieve. So this is an organisation that can't not do things, but actually it's about making sure we've got the sustained foundations that works within there as well. And that for me is really, really important about how we work together. I took this job to make a difference to you, to our rest of our people, volunteers, and our patients, and that's always a real challenge of how do we balance all of those tensions and dilemmas. But actually that's the commitment we have to have, because actually from our point of view, my point of view, exec colleagues' point of view, that's where we know we need to make that difference. And we also know we've got stuff to do as well. So I don't think we sit here going, it is all perfect or not. And that would be such a, I guess, a naive approach for us ever to think about it. And we had a really, I guess, a good, honest conversation at the Trust Board. And the Trust Board is made up of our executive directors and non-executive directors who really look to act as company directors and subject matter specialists in order to govern and assure the organisation. And that's really, really important about one really interesting conversation, which is about how did we know we were going to be heading for special measures? Discuss. And that's really quite, depending on which way you approach the answer, that's quite a kind of wide-ranging question, but really, really important, because it asks us to think about how we do what we do. How do we find out? How do we know? How do we enact? How do we prioritise? How do we make it a priority in the sense of dealing with it? How do we raise those? And that becomes really, really important as well. So I guess on to another important bit before I kind of pause to take a breath, and you'll have to forgive me, I probably am going to need to take a sip of water at the same time while I then read the questions. But importantly, John Syson, who is our Director of Workforce, has decided to take opportunities up outside of the Trust, so will be leaving us in order to support that transition. And to assist us, we've appointed an interim HR director, Bob Champion, and he has joined us now to do that handover with John and to support John. It's very much personal choice for John in terms of that, and I think from my point of view and the rest of the exec colleagues is John has been with us through some of the most challenging times ever known in my 20 odd years within this ambulance service, and he goes very much with our best wishes for the future, and actually thanks for the support and the guidance that he's given us. And we know that in this week, particularly when we talk about our values of teamwork, respect, is very much about the support and civility for our HR colleagues who have been through a number of changes themselves in leadership. So even if we talk about global leadership, very much about how we manage that and support that in as well. We are sad to say goodbye to John, but we also welcome Bob within the team and the exec team as well.